What's the password? Welcome to the Game Master Speakeasy. Brought to you by the record button.
Hello and welcome to the GM Speakeasy. I see you found your way in, got the password and everything. Come on in, pull up a chair next to the ever-burning hearth. I'm one of your hosts, Cody, joined by
Lance,
my good buddy Lance, who's been one of my companions in this crazy world we call tabletop. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. What are we here for?
Tabletop game stuff.
That's right. We're here to talk about tabletop game stuff. In case you're joining us on episode 3 and have missed the first 2, we are a podcast about tabletop games, primarily role-playing games. Here and there, we might talk about board games or TCGs or other stuff, but it's mostly RPGs.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened to the first 2 episodes, go do that.
Yeah, you can go do that right now, or don't. Either way, tell your friends. But
Do it.
Come on in, pull up a chair, and not just game masters are welcome here, even though you are encouraged to stay, especially if you are a game master. Lance and myself both are game masters, experienced to some degree or another, some in more other regards. You have more years of experience, definitely.
Yeah, but you're probably better at it than I am.
Yeah, at least for fantasy stuff like D&D and Pathfinder, which is what my current weekly game, Pathfinder 2. We have only a little bit of news today. Let's get started on the news segment. Aside from just a little bit ago, have you ever heard of Mothership?
Nope.
All right. Well, do you like things that are sci-fi horror?
Yes.
All right. So then we should probably try this system at least one time. Maybe do a one-shot of it. But Mothership, I believe it was primarily made by just two dudes. I don't know their names. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Just 2 brothers.
It's just called Two Brothers. The Mothership sci-fi horror setting system can be used for any sci-fi setting you want.
Okay.
But it's a very easy to pick up rule system. I actually have a copy of it. It's like a pamphlet. It's like it can't be more than 35 pages.
So we could play like System Shock, the tabletop.
We could do System Shock. We could do any sort. You could probably run an Aliens game in it. Like any sci-fi horror would do well, but particularly ones that involve spaceships.
Okay.
Yeah, because there are spaceship rules for it, and if I remember correctly, there's only like 3 or 4 base classes. One of them is like the researcher. One of them is the colonial marine. You've got space trucker. I think there's probably a 4th one in there, like the skilled mechanic or something like that.
Dan should totally make the space trucker.
He would love that. That's right up his alley. But no, this system has been out for a couple years. What I remember from their development was that they would have beta tests. They would have like public beta tests where you could just download the rules online, play, and provide feedback, probably through like Discord or something. But they currently, at least at the time of this recording, they have a Kickstarter for an actual boxed set, which is pretty sweet.
So like full-on book, not just rules. But
Yeah, so you've got like I think it's probably going to have a fancier hardcover book, probably, and maybe some gizmos to go along with it, some like attachments, peripheries. I don't know what all comes with it, but I know that there is a box set, and it's going to have like a deluxe edition.
So some shelf candy.
Yeah, you got your shelf candy, not unlike the things you have from 40K on your shelf and Dishonored.
40K, Dishonored, all my video game stuff.
Yeah. It's got some collectibles in there, but I think they crushed their goal already in like day 1.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of games that end up going through Kickstarters do really well on those, which is nice. It's nice to know that we have a strong tabletop gaming community that supports, new IPs coming out, new projects that people are putting together.
Okay, I just pulled it up. Their goal was $20,000.
Okay, that's a modest goal.
Yeah. They've got $821,000 so far, and 24 days to go.
That is a lot more money than they had asked for.
Yeah, so they have
probably more than they expected.
They got a $59 core set, which has the player's survival guide, the warden's operation manual, contact reports, and then what all the stretch goals are. And then there's the deluxe set that has like all that, and then additional stuff, unconfirmed contact reports, dead planet, pound of flesh. I imagine these are scenarios or adventures.
Sounds like the names of them.
Yeah, and then it looks like you got some dice and more shelf candy. But yeah, this has been yet another system I've had on my shelf and have not run yet. But
Well, you collect those
I do.
unused systems.
That's so other people collect like all the quarters or various coins or antique pots. I just collect rule books.
I collect beer glasses.
Someday I'll yeah, do you?
Well, I mean, basically from all the breweries we go to, or any of the beer festivals.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah.
My kid broke one of my Brewbecue ones from this last year.
Oh no!
I had two. So
What's a Brewbecue? I mean, I can guess based on the name, but is it like
yes?
Is it like an actual event? Or
Yeah.
Is it, okay.
Yeah, it's in Independence actually.
Okay, so it's a local thing.
Yep, local thing.
Gotcha.
Lots of beer and
You did not have
barbecue.
to travel far for the Brewbecue.
No.
All right. Well, that's a well. I guess you could probably get a future Brewbecue one then, huh?
I will almost assuredly go next year. Yes.
Speaking of Brewbecue, what are we drinking today?
We are drinking this this weird kind of key lime pie ghost with vanilla and coriander in it.
Do you like it?
It sounds a little weird, but honestly, it goes down okay. I think that my wife would really like this. As a fan of kind of sours and key lime pie, I think she would really dig this.
She can have the other 2 cans I have at home. My girlfriend hates it.
All right, fair enough.
And she's the one who picked it up.
I will take them home. I'm
Yeah.
sure Sarah will appreciate that.
So tell me, what else you got going on? What'd you do this week? Let's talk about your tabletop experience this last week. Would have probably primarily just been my session of our weekly.
That would have been all I did this week.
Yeah. That's,
Okay, well, if you guys listened to the last episode, we kind of left off talking a little bit about 2 of our compatriots being locked in a dungeon underneath of a greenhouse, and the rest of the party going down there with some weird spider witch lady. And we ended the session just before the fight kicked off.
Which was a wise decision because this next session we ran the fight and it lasted the whole
The
session.
whole session was
Yeah.
nothing but fight. So to set the scene, we're at this university, and we're underground, and we found out that there was some really shady stuff going on. Our monk and our barbarian had gotten in enough trouble that some of these members of this cult had drugged them when they were separated from the rest of us, disarmed them, and locked them up down
And
here.
I want to be clear because I didn't tell the group this, but I'm going to tell you this because it's relevant to the podcast. This was not GM Fiat wave of the hand. These were unfudged dice rolls behind the screen of the bad guy NPCs trying to sneak into their dorm room as well as make their stealth checks. There were 4 points of failure, and they rolled high on those d20s on all 4 of them. So it wasn't just, I captured 2 of the party members. It was I created DCs and everything, and the bad guys got really lucky.
Well,
I wholly expected actually in that situation when they were trying to drug the monk and barbarian that at least one of them would wake up and smash these dudes' faces in, but
I mean,
the dice did not deem that that was not the way of things. So
as we will be discussing in our open segment, the pros and cons to fudging dice rolls.
or fudging in general,
Fudging,
because you can fudge more than dice rolls.
Fudging in general. I wouldn't have cared if you'd have fudged the dice rolls to get them there. If it furthers the plot, getting them put in the jail cell is fine. But we'll get to that later. So we start combat with these 2 unconscious in the cell. Around this room, there's various vials of things and whatnot, and we found some wake-up serum, basically, that could either be taken orally with, like, a percentage chance of success.
Yeah, there would be. So you haven't had to do a lot of it as a rogue yet, and then no one in the group has done a whole lot of this, but Pathfinder 2 has what's called the Counteract Check. And it has to do with, like, the source of the counteract versus what it's trying to counteract, and then, so, like, if there's a failure, I think, is on the roll, if it's a failure, but the level is higher. So say, for instance, it's a level 2 poison, and you have, like, a level 3 counteract, counteracting antidote, for example. If you roll a failure, you still successfully counteract it because the level of the source is higher.
Okay.
So, anyway, there was the level of the antidote was equal, and then it had a plus modifier to it.
Yeah,
to
I know
the
you made
DC of the original poison.
I know you made a roll when there was an attempt for them to get up.
Yeah.
So
Taken orally, it required an 8 on the die to succeed, 8 or higher.
They both rolled like crap.
The person who administered it rolled a 1 on both the
gross.
first dies. Yeah, both first tries.
So as the fight starts, there's a series of pillars on the walls that all have these electrical lighting things, and there's like these weird electrical objects, Tesla coils, and things like that all over this laboratory. When the big bad, he made a gesture that ended up changing the source of the light, and I caught on that some of these sources of electricity, like where they were in the room.
Yeah.
So I took the first one out with a dagger, and it ended up shutting off basically the back half of the room's lights, which obscured all of us, which was good for my rogue.
Yeah, you're hidden.
And we also found out the hard way that if you break the energized bulbs, there's an arc of electricity that shoots out in an area around where the bulb was.
Yep, it's a 5 square emanation.
Yep. They
Or
could
5 foot.
Was that when it was turned up or turned down?
Turned up.
Okay, so turned down was just the one space.
Yeah, when it was turned up, it emanated in a 5 feet around it.
Okay.
When it was not given the juice, then it was only the square that it existed
Okay,
in.
and that's what I thought too. So we ended up doing that. Now, we had just leveled up before this session, and I had no idea that this was going to be as useful as it was because I didn't know we were going to need to administer this antidote to wake them up. But Bog, my goblin rogue, went ahead and took medicine skill and assurance as a skill feat.
Correct.
So that, like, he's pretty much guaranteed to get a baseline level of success on any medical checks.
On the basic stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Like-
Because it only adds your proficiency on it. You take 10 and add your proficiency.
And
Assurance
I mean,
Pathfinder
you
too.
would listen. I don't want him doing anything as complex as brain surgery anyway. He picks his nose, and he doesn't wash well.
Yeah,
so
he picks his nose. He's just he's a simple goblin of simple
he's
desires.
a gross little dude.
He's yeah, he's a little fucking.
I'm okay with that.
He's a little ball. He's a little walking ball of trash.
Yeah, basically. so our alchemist, who I figured would be like key to waking these guys up because
She's the medic of the
she's
group.
the medic of the group. She had her familiar snatch up these
The kit.
the kit that had 4 antidotes in it. One of them was in a needle for injection, and the other 3 were just in vials that could either be used to fill up the needle or they could be administered orally.
Yeah.
She sends her little dude to squeeze between the bars of the thing before we even get the door unlocked, and to try administering him. So this poor little familiar wastes 2 of these because the rolls made after they were administered orally were just abject failures. I mean, these were ones on both die.
Yep. Not
So
good.
I took out enough lights to make sure that the wizard on the other side of the room would probably have a really rough go at hitting my goblin. Crept over there, unlocked the door, and then I stole the kit from the familiar and used my newfound medical skills to wake up the other 2 guys. While all this is going on, we have the bard, the champion, and the alchemist all participating in combat while the...
Because 2 of the party members started off unconscious in a jail cell in this combat.
The monk and the barbarian are asleep. We're trying to remedy that situation to hopefully kind of turn the numbers and the action economy back on our side. Unfortunately, the champion got himself a little too deep with a lot of the enemies there because there was a pit full of undead that crawled out after us. A giant Frankenstein monster, some kind of devil or demon. I don't know what he was, but he was fighting our little spider witch buddy.
You don't know.
I don't know what that is.
No, not a lot of. No one attempted a recall knowledge check, so who knows?
I have no idea what that thing was. But I was, at least, for Bog worrying about his skin, I was more worried about ranged attacks from that wizard than anything else. So I made everything nice and dark. He was human. I was banking on him not having dark vision.
And he did not.
And it seemed to work out in my favor. We get the door unlocked. I inject both of these guys. About that time, I think, is when the champion went down.
Yeah. So the whole time that you are over being Bog. I have one question to ask. At the start of the combat, you actually went to the eastern side of the room, like at the beginning. You kind of went at this angle and away from the. What was your initial goal going that direction? Because I expected at the start. A lot of the times these combats start, and I think, well, if they behave like this, it won't be too hard. And then you guys don't behave like that.
Listen, we never behave like you think we're going to behave.
I expected you to use most of your actions to beeline to the jail cell.
I think that and that is what I said in the last session, actually, is that I could probably get over there and get them out of there. I didn't realize that they were still going to be deeply drugged when we got there, so once that became a thing, I was like, well, even if I can get over there, it's not going to do me a whole lot of good if I could wake them up. When I banked right, it was predominantly because I hadn't, and I think it was the alchemist that asked about it and noticed the table that had all the... both the drugs to knock them out and the drugs to wake them up. Well, not knowing how I was going to be able to wake them up, I think I banked that direction And I was trying to get cover behind the pillar because I
Okay.
didn't want the wizard to see me.
You're
but
just spreading out.
yeah, I was.
You know, she was going left, you were going right. All
And
right.
yeah, and that was kind of my figuring, was until we figured out how we were going to wake him up. There was a period at the beginning of that fight where I thought we were probably going to have to do the fight without him because I didn't know we had a way to wake them up yet.
No, I don't know that. I couldn't do that. That'd be anti-fun to
Yeah.
just make them sit in
mean,
combat and do nothing.
They still ended up sitting there for about half the fight because
They
none
did,
of us
unfortunately.
put a lot of effort into getting them out right away.
No, the two heaviest hitters of the party, and they were locked up behind bars.
Yeah, I feel like the barbarian was mad that I woke up the monk first, but he doesn't need weapons to kill people, so I
true.
went ahead and just let him.
So you tell us, so the champion, he was running right up front and center, straight through the middle of the room.
He was the group's tank, and he was doing what the tank does. But
There's a point to this story. We're getting to it.
yeah, but I think he bit off a little more than he could chew.
Yes, and if you recall last episode, I made an oath.
Yep. No, yeah, he did. He said that
this
as long as we were playing Pathfinder, he was not going to be fudging any dice rolls.
Not fudging any dice rolls, not fudging. I'm not going to fudge anything. I'm
not fudging any outcomes.
Not
Let's go with
fudging
that.
any outcomes, not fudging health. Everything's got to be prepped ahead of time, and it's got to follow through just to the will of chaos.
Yeah,
And that's what happened.
that is precisely what happened.
Yeah,
so, Rip Finn.
Rip Finn the champion. He went toe to toe with the big bad zombie. Who honestly was more a sack of hit points, low AC kind of guy.
Yeah, he was fighting the there was a
Little
bunch of zombies trying to swarm him too.
Yeah.
It was the zombies and then the big old Frankenstein monster thing that was going on in there.
But yeah, he had gone down once and then come back up. So he was wounded one, so he went down a second time and he was dying too. And then on the first time that he rolled a death save or a death saving throw,
Crit fail.
number one on the die,
Yep.
and that was it.
Curtains.
Which I kind of felt bad, but that was he kind of left the room in a huff. 3 minutes later, he was back downstairs ready to build a new character.
Yep.
He spent the rest of the session on Path Builder, looking up options. Even if I went out of my way to reveal to him that there might be a way for that character to come back alive. It was already in the world. It's nearby. There's a chance that player could still play that character. And he's like, no, I got a new idea already. So
I mean, I like the character. Finn was like a super nice guy, and he was always nice to Bog, which isn't always the case with most characters because Bog kind of a turd.
yeah,
but,
he's a huge turd, but he's lovable.
But I do think Finn was kind of out of place in the group anyway. As a group full of pirates having the kind of more moral champion in the group.
Yeah,
I was always it never happened, but I was always waiting for the point where our motivations as pirates ran afoul of his
At some point, it was going to.
morality, and then we were going to have a conflict.
Which would
in the
have
group
been
anyway.
dramatic.
No, it would have been dramatic.
It would have made for
but
an interesting story. But at the start of this campaign, I asked you guys for this pirate campaign, how piratey are your characters? And you guys looked me in the face and said, well, they're pirates.
Yep.
So you guys are not necessarily, you're not good people.
I think that fits Bog very well for this campaign.
Absolutely, this is a good campaign to play Bog in. But the guy had an idea for a character, and for personal reasons, he really wanted to play this character. And so we had to. It was going to have to be. There was no way he was playing a paladin. In the Pathfinder system, paladins are lawful good. If you're playing a pirate, you're against. In general, most law.
Closer to neutral, anyway.
You can try and say, oh, we've got our own code, own lawful code, but I'm trying to play, at least for the first year or so that we play Pathfinder, I want to play close to rules as written. And the anathema for paladins is
Breaking the law.
It would be too much to run his character the chaotic good champion. We could weasel that in, kind of. He doesn't, because one of the tenets of a champion who is chaotic good, you cannot infringe upon other people's way of living. That's part of his time. He can't tell you not to be a pirate.
So he's a libertarian.
Yeah, I mean, well, we don't need to bring politics into this, but kinda. Yeah, right. He wanted to. That's one of the tenets of being a chaotic good champion is that you cannot tell people how to live their life. You can, stop undead and defeat fiends and bad guys if you want, but there's no one is too far gone that they can't have a chance to live a proper life.
Fair enough. I think he's fixing to replace Finn with a gunslinger. Then, at least that was what he told me most recently.
Well, yeah, that's true. You are his. He wants to take the sniping duo archetype, and that requires buy-in from another party member.
Well, he told me the only thing I would need is to make sure that I had my reaction available for him, which I don't have a lot of use for currently.
There are some things you could do with your reaction as part of his archetype, but otherwise, I'm talking about flavor-wise.
Oh,
because you would be his spotter essentially. So it requires buy-in on Bog's part to work with this gnome and be a team about it.
Oh, he's a gnome.
No, he didn't.
No, he did not tell me that. He sent me a message asking me what I do with my reaction, and I said currently nothing, but I do have some stuff coming up in future levels that will be pretty key for that.
Oh yeah,
and because he said it was either going to be me or the barbarian that he was going to try to get to spot for him, because I think he linked me some ability where he can basically shoot and bounce a bullet off my weapon.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
hit
yeah.
Targets with it, something wild like that.
It's super bad. It's super awesome. It's super badass. It's he shoots a bullet and you become the point of origin, so you can redirect it off the side. It's real hokey. That's not something you do in real life, but this is fantasy role playing at its finest.
I'm looking forward to it, just if nothing else, to see what the gunslinger's capable of. It's a new class. I haven't really even looked into it at all, so this will be just a kind of a new.
Mechanically, he's going to crit more than anyone else. Yeah. So in Pathfinder 2, the fighter was alone in the fact that they got legendary weapon proficiency. No other class did. The gunslinger gets legendary weapon proficiency eventually, and they start off expert at level 1. And so he's going to be at level 5 master proficiency, whereas you just got expert proficiency. So that's an additional +2. That's another 10% chance to hit, another 10% chance to crit. But he's got so we're on to today's topic. He's creating a new character because of his character died. My question to you, Lance, have you ever fudged the game to prevent a character dying?
Oh yeah, lots and lots and lots of times.
All right, tell me about it.
Okay, well, I mean, the list is long and vast. I will just say that a lot of this, and this is just kind of the precursor to this conversation, a lot of it depends on the system that you're playing and kind of where as a GM you want the campaign to go. And this is the kind of thing I expect there'll probably be a lot of emails and comments on, because this is a very divisive topic.
It's a very hot topic, one might say.
In the gaming community as to, whether or not it's acceptable to fudge dice rolls. I'm on the pro side. I think that if the story requires it, if it makes for a better story, then you should do it. I mean, because after all, I've always looked at these games like a very, very complex choose-your-own-adventure book.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
many plots are set up like that.
Mm-hmm. And so, if some part of your plot...
Especially pre-written adventures.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if some part of your overall campaign arc kind of requires that one or more of your characters be there for it, that, and it's one of those things where it depends on the circumstance. I, for a long time, didn't like having any of my players die if it wasn't sufficiently dramatic.
Right.
Like, and this was probably most predominant in Deadlands. Like, because as we talked about, I think in the first episode when we kind of hit on Deadlands, or maybe we didn't, it's one of those systems that, since it's not level-based, a, like, nobody moot character with a good roll can easily take out. Well, I wouldn't say easily, but I mean
There's a chance.
There's definitely a chance there.
They roll right. There's exploding dice in Deadlands, so you roll the highest one. You roll it again and add it.
Keep rolling as long as you can hit that highest one. And
you got your revolver shooting what, 1d6, 2d6? I think
3d6 was the base damage.
3d6. So yeah,
most of your good revolvers.
You roll one of those. You got a 5, a 4, and a 6. Then you roll that 6 again. Oh, that's another 6. Roll it again. Suddenly you're damaged to the. And it's a headshot.
That's a headshot. Now you got 2 extra d6s on top of it.
You could lose an arm.
Easily.
You could lose your head.
And I didn't ever really think that it was sufficiently cool to have a character that would die at the hands of some just nobody enemy.
Yeah,
I mean, as a player, it doesn't make you feel
with a $10 bounty out in Arizona.
Make you feel good about your character. It doesn't make you feel good about the game. And as a game master, if the plot that you had going on honestly included some of these characters being present, so while I might make him take like 4 wounds to the head, maybe even get knocked out of combat, somehow I'd find a way to pull him through.
Right.
Now, that's not always the case, and I mean, to be honest with you, more often than not, I would neglect to fudge dice when players did something stupid. I guess life's hard. Life's harder if you're stupid.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's one of those situations
you play
where
stupid games, win stupid prizes.
So I mean, some of those characters that got away just based on pure luck because if they were doing something stupid, I'd rarely do anything to save them.
Yeah.
But what is your take on fudging dice? I know we've talked about it in Pathfinder because you've pretty much declared that's a no-go.
Yes, as of especially last, and I haven't done a whole lot of it. I would say maybe since we started Pathfinder, I might have done it once, and it was, and I think I'll come clean. It was just initiative. I rolled initiative for all the monsters, and it was all at the bottom. They were all I just wanted a monster to have an option to go first.
You just wanted them to not all be dead
before
their turns.
It wasn't even like a dramatic encounter. It was just like, you guys were fighting some mooks, right? And I just wanted at least one or two of the mooks to have a chance to swing at your AC before things were over.
Oh yeah.
But don't get me wrong. There's, you have those encounters where the party they just wipe the floor with the enemy, and it makes you feel awesome, right? When you do that. But if at the same time, one thing that GMs worry about is providing enough threat that it feels real. You want the authenticity that your characters could die. You want that in the back of their heads. Especially if you're trying to fudge to keep them alive, but you don't want them to die because you're rooting for them.
Well,
a good GM is rooting for their players to succeed.
For sure, because again, it's all about telling a good story. It's not like if you're a GM that's playing this game to win, it's you at that point. I'll be honest,
what are you doing with your life?
You've already failed. Because,
who hurt you?
Exactly, because as simple as it sounds, you can just drop cows out of orbit onto your players. I mean, if killing them is your only goal, you have a very bad mentality about gaming. It's supposed to be about everybody around the table having fun and telling a story.
And at least in modern day tabletop, it is. Yes, that's very much true.
There's a difference between this like war games, but I mean war games you don't really have a GM anymore. You've got two dudes just rolling dice and making decisions.
There's an interesting interview. Where Matt Colville interviews his buddy, who has also been a longtime GM from like way back in old edition D&D. And back then, it was much more gamified. And they talk about how back then they would measure their nights in how many rooms got cleared. Hey, how many rooms did you clear in your D&D session? Because it was just all done. It was Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
So it was more about clearing dungeons and less about narrative. Whereas these days, it's more about the narrative. But they also, back then, apparently it was weird if they went more than a couple sessions and people didn't die.
Yeah, I mean...
It was because adventuring is a deadly,
deadly
game.
I would argue that old D&D was almost more of a board game.
It kind of was, yes.
Than a role-playing game, if that makes any sense.
It had its inspirations from war games. You look at Chainmail, which was kind of like a war game, and that's where D&D had some of its first rules taken from.
Yeah.
Kind of, at least my understanding of it is. And so I have a question. This is a specific situation. You might not be able to remember. There was a point where, before I joined Deadlands, you had your players trapped up in the mountains in a snowstorm.
I do remember that.
Yeah. Was there any fudging for the survival of that encounter? Because what was it? Was it a Yeti or a Wendigo? It was a Wendigo. They were up in the mountains, secluded in a cabin, probably starving. One of them was diseased because he had been bitten by like hyper rabid wolves.
Oh, that we had solved that. The rabid wolf thing was dealt with. But one of the characters...
wasn't Flick suffering from some illness while they were trapped in that cabin?
No, we had dealt with that.
Okay,
it was
something else.
It was Paddy, the Irish gunslinger.
Yes, that's right.
He had
Neil's
a
guy.
very, very severe addiction to alcohol.
Oh, yeah,
and so
that's
his
right.
struggle during that thing is that they were trapped up in the mountains for several weeks, and he didn't have any booze.
Right.
So he started really, he had some pretty heavy modifiers for that, because he had taken, the highest possible level
addiction
of
3
addiction.
Or addiction 5 or something
it was
like
2 or
that.
3, but yeah, he took the highest level of addiction to alcohol, so he was struggling. I did do...
Always drink responsibly, kids. Seriously.
No, I mean, I agree with you, but yeah.
I honestly love it for a dramatic story. You're up in there, trapped by this, I assume Wendigo, well, I can assume all I want. I don't know the beast statistics until I run it again. I wouldn't know, but I assume Wendigos move pretty quick.
Yeah, and they're very hard to kill.
Yeah.
I did fudge a little bit in the player's favor when they finally got to fighting the Wendigo, because the starvation and the weather had them so beaten down that which, I mean, that was kind of the purpose, but I wasn't trying to kill them on the mountain. That was not my intent when I put them up there in the first place. And they didn't put themselves in that situation. I didn't leave them much choice. I mean, I didn't railroad them, but they were being followed or something by the authorities for something else that they'd done, then gotten themselves in trouble. They basically fled into the mountains, into the storm, in order to get away from the authorities that were chasing them.
Right. And so but did you have to do any fudging?
Yeah, when they fought the Wendigo, I want to say that he rolled high enough on one of his attacks that he would have clear-cut one of the players. 1 hit, 5 wounds to the chest, done.
So they would have done.
I whittled that down to survivable levels.
All right.
But I on the subject of fudging, I do want to say that when I do it, when I kind of aspire to use that as a tool in my toolbox, it goes both ways. Much like you said, sometimes when it comes to enemies that you want to make sure they get a turn, or you buff their HP a little bit to make sure that there's a little bit of a challenge. I do the same thing too. If I've got a big bad and one of the players gets like a just crazy off the wall shot that's so good that he's going to clear this dude's head off in 1 hit, I will fudge the numbers to make sure that doesn't happen. I need to keep him alive for a couple rounds because, like you said, sometimes you just have to provide the illusion of challenge.
Yeah.
Even if it's not an actual challenge.
If you can successfully keep up the drama and your players aren't suspecting you of it, then...
Well, and that's kind of my philosophy when it comes to fudging dice, is that at the end of the day, it's just another tool as a GM for you to keep in your toolkit in case you need it. It's not so, like, you shouldn't go into the fights with the expectation that you're going to need to fudge things, because that's a sign of bad tuning. That means you didn't prepare enough when you were GMing in the first place. And you shouldn't go in there to save your players from every stupid thing that they could conceivably do either. I mean, at some point, they're going to have to learn how to play within the world correctly. I mean, if you're going to be really, really stupid, you also need to be really, really strong. Okay.
You better have maxed out that Constitution/Vigor score.
I'm not going to mention any names, but the Deadlands version of Hung is a really good example of that.
Oh, yes. Captain Hung Solo.
He did everything stupid he could find, and it was fun. He was a blast of a player to GM, but he was the most chaotic element ever.
He breaks Rule 1 pretty much every other session.
Separating the party.
Hung doesn't make problems. He makes adventures.
He does. And I mean, he's doing the same thing in Pathfinder, but I don't think he's quite as powerful in Pathfinder as he was in Deadlands.
So because Dan's playing Hung right now, the Pathfinder version of him, and I imagine as we go forward, Hung and Bog together, it's going to be chaos.
Yeah, well, that was the whole reason that I decided to play Bog. I was like, this is going to be absolute and utter hijinks will ensue, because both of them are too stupid to know any better.
That's right. All right, I'm going to go back to that thing you said about things being tuned not properly.
Okay.
When I was running 5e, as time went on, I had to fudge more and more. I don't know if it was just maybe because, like I said, I was still kind of getting my the treads going into the dirt those first couple of years, because I didn't have a lot of personal long-term experience to draw from. But now that I do, I can see, and I've got other accounts of this, whether it be from people on the internet. I've been heavily influenced by a YouTube channel I just found called Knights of Last Call.
I've watched a few of their
videos. And that's actually one of the reasons I took it as a personal challenge here to swear an oath not to fudge. Mm-hmm. And they, among others, and myself, have experienced that, in 5e, there were situations where I had to fudge, and it usually wasn't to save you guys. It was usually to make the encounters less boring. Yeah, there were multiple times where I would make, according to the rules, what should be a deadly encounter, and we're talking about levels 5 through 10.
Yeah.
Before you guys have gotten these OP magic, our OP magic. Now that you guys are like
mid-tier D&D.
Yeah, tier 2 bordering on tier 3 D&D. Before I have given you guys now you guys are level 16 with a bunch of OP stuff. High level D&D, I'm throwing balance out the window, right? Like, I'm not even gonna worry about balance in high level 5th edition. But at a point where tier 2, a lot of people think that's the part of the game where it shines the most, because you should be able to have it enough mechanical engagement from all your players' classes with creatures to create interesting encounters. And I would say that I could still create interesting encounters, but the number of times that I just looked at that character sheet, looked at the stat block of a monster after you guys got to go once or twice. You know, if especially the monster, so what happened I would not fudge the monster's initiative, and then I would have to give him more hit points because you guys got to go before him.
And he's just dying.
Yeah, he was
it's already bloody.
Yeah, he's already at half HP or more before he even got to go. So it was either, I found a lot of the time it was either fudge the monster's initiative, because if he didn't have if he didn't have off-turn actions, then the big bad of the group. It's usually, I favor the here's one big beefy monster, and he's got some mooks, right?
Yeah, and the mooks are all fodder anyway. Who cares?
The mooks are fodder anyway. But you guys sometimes that it's just the way certain mechanics work, and it wasn't just in 5e. We briefly did my very first foray into game mastering was Deadlands, original Deadlands, and I believe that there was a fudge involved. Because I wanted to make something happen. I don't know. It's at that point, there's an argument to be made that if you fudge, you're railroading.
I mean,
right? And that's a dirty word.
I'm not sure that railroading is always a dirty word. I mean, it depends on the force at which you're railroading the players.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you're fudging a die roll in order to, like, say, knock the entire party out because it's a plot device to put them into a jail cell somewhere.
Yeah, don't do that.
No, that I think is bad. I think that is legitimately railroading. But if you're just trying to kind of gently nudge the party in a given direction and you're fudging it, if you haven't really taken away their agency, you've just provided them with an incentive, either positive or negative, to go in a given direction. I don't know that I would consider that railroading. But I mean, I think when it comes to the whole fudging thing, I think a lot of it depends on the system that you're playing in. Systems that are geared.
It's a lot about setting expectations, isn't it? Too. You want to talk to your group about what will and won't happen in a game, and how deadly will this game be?
Yeah.
So if you've promised them, hey, your players have a strong chance of making it to endgame, then you got to do what you got to do, whether it be nudging your monster's health, their attack roll, their miss, their hits. Like that.
And like you kind of illustrated with 5e, some systems are better tuned than others.
Yeah.
Like I love the Deadlands setting, and the system I love is slow and kind of grinding as the system may be.
Yeah.
But I don't think the system is really, really well tuned. There's a lot of potential, and you will find this in any game with exploding dice, but there's just so much potential in there for like really high spikes of unanticipated damage that can take an encounter with a big bad and just make them small fish. That just a couple of good crit rolls here and there, and then all of a sudden this prolific, big bad evil guy that the party was spent,
especially with a 5e paladin.
Well,
right? The crit divine smite.
And if you've spent all this time building up, especially if you're doing this thing where you're kind of building up the bad guy behind the scenes.
Oh yeah.
Like they've never had the opportunity to fight him, but they've seen the aftermath of what he's been able to do.
Always in his wake.
Yeah, this just trail of destruction that you're following behind. Once you finally get to the guy, if he just turns out to be a total chump because of a couple of good rolls, that's just disappointing. I mean, we've all seen a movie where the movie was phenomenal and the ending sucked. That's what happens if you have that occur.
That's true.
And on the inverse of that, like I said, I don't like to typically see my characters, my players' characters taken out by some jobber NPC that nobody cares about. And there are settings where that has its place. I think that if you did a setting
rough and tumble, everything is
dangerous.
Like
let's just say you were playing a game in like a World War II setting, and you were playing something akin to storming the beaches of Normandy.
Oh yeah,
a stray shot killing a guy in that scene makes a whole lot of sense. If you're playing a more heroic campaign,
you're trying to take the ring to Mordor.
Yeah, if you're trying to take the ring to Mordor and, like, the first orc that shows up crits Aragorn and he dies. I mean, well, that sucked. Congratulations, the entire trilogy's ruined.
Oh, gosh.
You ruined all of it, So, I guess in my mind...
Doomed is the third age.
Yeah, in my mind, even the rules of the game itself are a part of what goes in your toolbox in order to tell a proper story. Which means that if you don't need the rules to get to the proper story, you're welcome to throw them out, to fudge them, to change them, to do whatever you need to do. try to do it with some level of consistency so you're not throwing your players way out of whack. If,
Yeah.
when they walk into a situation with the expectation that the rules are going to remain reasonably intact when they make their decisions. I mean, I can think of one example of when you were GMing in 5e.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Arum and the Dragon story?
This is going to come up again in the next episode, I think.
Is it?
Or a future episode, yeah, where we talk about our worst mistakes as
Okay.
Game Masters. Yeah, but no, this one stands out as one of my weaker points as a Game Master.
Yeah, and you told me after the fact, you were just like, I should have never let you make that roll, because I crushed a persuasion roll, basically, to get a dragon to kind of, I guess, help us out, or
It was
at least
a persuasion check.
At least to not destroy us for the thing that we were looking for in its cave. And what did I get, like a 25 or 26 on the roll? It was some
24, if I can remember
24.
correctly.
It was some obscene.
It was very high for 5th
number.
edition with its bounded accuracy.
Yeah, and the dragon still turned on us, and we still ended up having to fight it. And I was not particularly happy about it. We talked about it after the fact. I mean, I think Cody has a pretty easy time dealing with me, because having been in the Game Master seat as much as I have, if he does something that after the fact he's like, you know what, I probably should have handled that differently, me and him can sit down and have that discussion.
Easy.
Because I've done the same stupid thing before myself. And that was the first thing he said. He said, if it had been up to me, I never would have let you make that roll. Or if I'd have thought about it in advance, I never would have let you make that roll.
Yeah, I never should have. We'll talk about that more at a future date. But yes, I in summation, as far as fudging goes, you're on the side that as long as it's in a system where it's appropriate, and depending on it's just like many things, it's very situational.
If it's in service to the greater story, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, you're okay with it. And on my point of view is, it depends, I think, heavily on the setting and your players' expectations. Tell your players ahead of time. And that's actually a generic rule for game mastering anything.
That's true.
Set your players' expectations. It's very important that they know what they're going into. They don't want to get to a situation and you're like, oh, we have a house rule about this. No, tell them that stuff ahead of time. If you're playing a tactical game like Pathfinder 2 is, or something like Lance, or if you're playing a more tactical combat-based game, I think, especially one that's well-balanced, there should be no reason to fudge. Because I also, as the Game Master, can flex my improv skills on that, because something might happen that I won't suspect. I actually didn't expect you guys to lose 2 of your guys getting kidnapped and drugged. I thought they would probably fail those rolls and wake up and punch those guys. Stars Without Number has something called the reaction roll, where you roll 2d6, and based on a chart, NPCs that they come across might behave differently. So even though you have a bunch of hostile bandits, you roll a 12, they're going to actually behave at a step or 2 steps above, a situation of social status level. They might actually help them. So as a dungeon master, especially if you want to flex your improv skills, let the dice flow. See what happens and roll with the punches. That's what I'm going to try to do, because after a couple years of feeling like I had to fudge in 5e, I'm gonna let go. I'm gonna let go of the wheel, not Pulp Fiction. I'm gonna let go, Fight Club style, and see what happens. But yeah, that's what I plan to do. That's how. But just when it comes to fudging, do what feels appropriate, and don't force your players into situations. Do what you can not to rob them of their agency. Other than that, you got anything else on fudging today?
No, not really.
All right. I believe that is last call coming up. So we've got the let's do some shilling. All right. I want to talk to you guys about how you can find us elsewhere if it's last call, but if you want to find more of us, if you enjoyed your time here next to the ever-burning hearth, you can find us on recordbuttongroup.com along with other shows produced by the Record Button. You can find the Record Button on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where you can find updates and news. Share us with your friends. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Don't forget to rate and review. Maybe drop a comment, too. I'm actually looking forward to, even if it's just our own friends, commenting and having stuff we can talk about. Until next time, I'm Cody.
And I'm Lance.
And this has been the Game Master Speakeasy. Please get home safe.